lifelong learning, right?
So one last thing to talk about. So I was just saying that even though they'd increased the budget, they're Tony level lighting designers and scenic designers and all these things, the performances are still these really specific, beautiful, genuine interactions between these individuals. Hey, look, we got a wide shot. Hey, neat, awesome. Okay, great. Then I'm going to turn off. Got it. I'm going to turn off the camera on this guy here because that's all right. That's just a little bit weird because it's like looking up my nose. Not that you can because I got my mask on. Though I'll take that off in a minute. Anyhow, so yeah, it's just a really stunning show. And like I say, it's 12 ensemble members. There's not really a lead. It's sort of, they each have individual stories. Yeah, I was blown away. I'm glad you had the same experience. Yeah, I cried through most of that show. And I'm not somebody usually like I'll cry at a Christmas commercial for, you know, Cars or Amazon or whatever, or McDonald's. And I cry at movies, but like it's not often that like a theater piece moves me that much. I mean, I'm often moved, don't get me wrong, but to be moved to like tears throughout a piece, I was impactful. Ooh, so that video is doing some fun things back there. Now we're good. All right. Hey, that's not looking sharp. Hi, everybody. All right, cool, neat. Okay, so first of all, let's recap slightly. Let's go back. I'm not going to go back through the whole thing. Oh, good. That's even better video quality and everything. Cool. So recapping slightly, on our first lesson, we talked about sort of backstage at the theater. Did a whole tour, got through half of it. We also spent a little bit of time introducing me as Eric Van Tassel, your lighting and sound professor for the theater and dance departments at Hope, and talked about that backstage experience is going to be very similar regardless of where you end up, whether it's a large theater company or a small theater company. You're going to have some version of that sort of layout wherever you land. So when you go see a show, whether it be at the community theater here in town, or at the Grand Rapids Civic, or at the DeVos Performance Hall, or at the Goodman Theater in Chicago, or at the Public in New York City, basically, that's your setup in one form or another. And then last week, we finished up that tour and talked a little bit about from the page to the stage. How do we get from concept, first, how do we pick shows? And then once we've picked a show, how do we get from concept to fully realized production? And we've spent a lot of time, we also talked about so we were okay with me taking off my mask. So I will do that again, especially because we've got this new camera over there and now I look so much more personable. Hello. Very good. Excellent. So, cool. Adjusting my mic. Great. So then today we're talking about lighting specifically. So as we talked about, I'm professor of lighting and sound design, but my expertise is lighting. So when I went to the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, my master's of fine arts is in lighting design. It's specifically lighting design and technology. While I was there, I was only required to take one sound course, but I knew that I wanted to end up at a small liberal arts college, similar to where I had gone to undergrad. Hey, look, that worked out great. And a school this size doesn't typically have multiple faculty members for lighting and sound. You're fortunate if you have multiple staff that can help with that, which we do. We have phenomenal staff members who can help with both lighting and sound and projections. So I took 4 sound design classes so that I would be better prepared to be able to do a job like this one. But lighting is still my passion and will continue to be. So as we start talking about lighting design, so here's how we're going to kind of do this. Let's do that. folks that are online, if you have anything that you want to chime in with, absolutely drop it in the chat. I've minimized my little views of y'all, so I can't see your face on here. If you show your video and wave, I can't see you. So you can either unmute. I'm totally fine with that. Jump in with a question. I'm happy to answer questions on the fly. We've been doing that in the classroom. It's been great. Or if you want to throw something in the chat, that works too. And I usually do a pretty good job of keeping track of that. In fact, to make my life easier, no, we'll keep that as that. That's fine. I'll just check in on the chat from time to time. Cool. So wonderful. So we're going to start with lighting. And we're going to talk about, here's sort of going to be our approach for today about talking about lighting. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to talk a little bit about sort of what artistically are my tools as a lighting designer, sort of conceptually, okay? And what's going to be fun about that for y'all is that if you track this part of this conversation, you'll be able to see this in action. When you go see a show next time, you'll be able to be like, oh, I see what they did there. Eric's trying to trick me. And the problem is that I'm going to have told you all of the secrets, and so then you'll know what I'm doing. The next thing we'll talk about is sort of my specific process of from the page to the stage, like we talked about last week, but dial in specifically in the lighting part of it. Yeah, all that makes sense? Let's do it. So here we go. So let's, first of all, if I were to ask you, so just thinking about when you think about light, if you think about light in the world, and you're thinking about the light that you see in your house, the light you see in this room, the light you see outdoors, the light you see on television, the light you see on stage, what are some words you might use to describe that? I might even grab this whiteboard over here and jot some things down, and I'll bring it over here so it is on camera. So the camera is a rather wide shot. So we'll see. Put it a little bit more on that side. There's the cameras right on it. We're in good shape. Okay, cool. So how would you describe light? What are some words that you would use? Bright. Brightness is great. Yeah. How? Not with that marker, it isn't. Hang on. We'll try one of these other ones. And if this one doesn't work, I've got one in my bag. Yep, that one's bad too. We'll go to my bag. I started carrying markers in my bag when I was a grad student, and I got so annoyed that professors didn't do the same, because they would go into classrooms where there wasn't a marker or anything, and then they'd be like, oh, there's no marker, I guess we can't do that thing. And so I would then just pull the markers out of my bag, because that would be, because somebody needed to be prepared. Harumph. So now I still carry them, because I never wanted to have a student need to hand me a marker. So brightness. That's great. Yeah. What else? Illuminating is great. Illuminating is a wonderful word, and is very similar to brightness in some ways, but it's a more poetic word, which I like very much. I actually love the word illuminate. I think illuminate has it's also fun because it has sort of theological, allegorical sort of aspects to it that I like very much as well. What else we got? Distribution is a good one. Tell me more about what you mean by that. Yeah, how much space does the light cover? Yeah, very good. Other stuff. What else you got? What was that? Shadows, yeah. Sort of the contrast of light to shadow. Very good. What else we got? Color, yes. Anything else?
Mood.
Mood is good. Yeah, somebody I think online just said mood. Mood's wonderful. Yeah, very good. Excellent. So you've got y'all have come up with a good collection of here. And here's what I would sort of posit to sort of to try and sum this up. I'm going to say that brightness and illuminating all have to do with intensity. How bright is it? brightness versus darkness, intensity, yeah? Distribution and shadow, I'm going to say all falls under distribution. The idea being where is the light and where isn't the light, and also where is the light coming from, yeah? And then color and mood, I think, are very much related. Mood, I think, is interesting in that mood kind of can relate to a bunch of these. Mood is sort of the effect from some of these causes, yeah? Tracking that with me? So color is another tool that can help us get that mood. So we'll sort of delineate those a little bit. So let's look at that on my little screen here. Intensity, color, movement, distribution. Oh, that's interesting. Y'all are, huh. Cool, that's good to know. When I'm one click behind over here. That's fascinating. Unless, oh, are we just, yeah, we are delayed. The video is delayed. The video is like herky jerky, like I'm freezing here. Because I just hit back and now it's back. I think this little computer is tired. It is trying to do too much. So that's okay. I hope folks online, I hope you can follow, and I hope that it doesn't get too disjointed between what I'm saying and what's on screen. But we'll give it our best shot. And if you've got questions, by all means, holler, and we'll absolutely pick up on them. Okay, so yeah, I just watched myself speed up on screen as it all just snapped into place. Okay, so just for the sake of letting you know, all of the images that you'll see on this slide deck are things from shows that I lit. So if you got questions about them, we can holler them out. So aspects of light, these 4 aspects of light: intensity, color, movement, distribution. And y'all came up with 3 out of 4, not having read the chapter. Well done. So we didn't even have to sign homework and you all picked it right up. Well done. That's very exciting. So yeah, intensity, color, movement, distribution. These are sort of the 4 aspects of light. We're going to break these down a little bit and talk through them a little bit. Y'all already picked up on some of the main points here, though. So intensity. So what we mean by intensity, we already talked about here, brightness, illumination, yeah? So here we go. I'm going to stop there at brightness. So how bright a light is versus how dark it is. There's also relative brightness. Yeah, let's think about this for a minute. I've got 3 actors on stage. I have a little spotlight on each of them. And I've got all 3 of those spotlights at full. And I need to make you focus on the person over here on stage right, on my right. How am I going to get you to focus on this person? I can't make this light any brighter. What might I do to make this light feel brighter, even though I can't make it any brighter than it is currently? What was that? Yeah, turn off the other 2, or even just turn them down, right? Relative brightness. If I can't get any brighter, well, then I got to do something else in contrast, right? I can reduce something else to make this one seem like it's brighter. Now, if I do that elegantly, you won't say, they got darker, and be frustrated. I will have already drawn your eye over here, so you won't be bothered by the fact that they aren't as vibrant as they once were. We can also talk a little bit about where that light comes from and sort of what that light then looks like. That's what I mean by motivated light sources. So motivated light sources are the idea that sometimes I want light on stage that looks like it is coming from someplace or something realistic. Yeah, an actual, if you've ever heard an actor joke, what's my motivation, right? What's my motivation in this scene? We can do the same thing for lighting. What's the motivation? Where is this light coming from? So what are some places that could be sources of light? Let's talk interior first. We're indoors right now. The light in this room, where's it coming from? We can all see each other, which means there's light in here. So where's that light coming from? Yeah, you pointed from over here, from the windows. Yeah. Even though the fact that the windows are closed, we've got blinds over them, there's still a lot of light in this room that comes from these windows. Yeah. other things, other sources of light in here. That's the main one. That's the main one that's lighting us. Like electric light. How about now? A screen, the projector screen is a source of light. We've got all kinds of sources of light. Electric light, yeah, so the lights in the ceiling. Let's think about in our homes. What are some other sources of light in our homes? Computer screen, yeah. Firelight can't if you got if you have a fireplace that is up to code. Mine's not. I'd like it to be. I've got two. Neither of them are. We moved into the house and it's on the list. We'll get there. We talked about overhead light, but there's other lamps in your house as well, right? Bedside table lamp is maybe different from the lamp in your living room, is maybe different from the lamp in a child or grandchild's bedroom or something like this. Yeah, so we have a lot of different sources of light, and that can change how as we think about that, we can change intensity. Yeah, that bedside table lamp, or even more so, anybody have like a book light that is like one of these things where you actually like clip onto the book on your hardcover book so you can read the thing. I do a lot of reading on Kindles and phones now, even of books, but that's partially because I read big giant science fiction fantasy things that are heavy and I'd rather just read it on my phone. Yeah, so there's lots of different sources of light. Those little sources have a different type of intensity than some of these bigger things. How about exterior, outdoors? What are some sources of light outside? I'll get this out of here. I don't think I'll need this again. What are some other sources of light?
Reflected light.
Street lights are great. Absolutely. The sun, the moon, celestial bodies. Yes. Yeah, very good. What else we got? Neon light downtown. Yeah, so instead of just street lights, although sometimes street lights have some of that sort of like blue quality to them. Yeah. Yeah, but like lights from signage of companies and things like this. Yeah, great. So depending on our exterior source, we've got different light types of intensity. We also could use those different types of those motivated sources to think about other aspects of light as well, one of which would be color. So as you think about color, obviously we can talk about mood, atmosphere, time of day, and then like I'm going to say special effects. What I mean by that is not everything that we try to do with lighting on stage is realistic. We're not necessarily trying to make it look like a real place. A lot of times we are, but that's different from when we try to sort of push the envelope. Think about a musical, for example. If we've got a lot of times in a musical, we might have something that looks realistic until a song starts, right? Because here's our two young lovers and they are here on the veranda and we've got beautiful sunlight through dappled trees that is sort of looking very realistic. And then they have emotions that are just so big, they have to sing. And as they start to sing, all of the light becomes purple and blue and there's a golden glow around them. Yeah, it's not the sun anymore. It's not realistic, but we're doing something that's sort of a special effect kind of thing. We're not doing special effects like a superhero action movie with like computer generated people or anything like that, but just the special effects of the moment of changing color to something that's not real. But yeah, time of day, mood, atmosphere. Mood was one of the things we put on our list over there. Thinking about time of day, here's some things that an interesting fact about sort of what we expect out of color when we think about time of day. How does a sunset look different from a sunrise? There isn't necessarily a right or wrong answer to this. I'm looking, what is your opinion? How do you feel like a sunset looks different from a sunrise? So it feels like sunrise feels brighter and sunset feels more color, feels richer colors. Yeah, cool. That's I think that's a nice description. Anybody else have differing opinions or other thoughts? Anything to add to that? Yeah, daylight is awakening. There's an invigorating feeling to sunrise, whereas sunset can feel calming or can feel more restrained at times, but not always. Yeah, because sometimes you have those sunsets where it's a vibrant red. And my grandparents used to live on Lake Michigan when I was a kid, and we used to when the giant ball of sun would get right down into the water, and we could watch it from their porch, and we would pretend that you could hear it boiling in the water. So you go as it sank into the sea, into the freshwater sea. Um, um, yeah. So here's the reality. Scientifically, they look the same. They're not actually that different. But exactly to the point that we just made here, we associate narrative with these things. Yeah. Out of the darkness comes light, brightness, as opposed to at the end of the day, a relaxation, or sometimes a danger, the gathering dark. Oh no, it's encroaching. But then we do things with richer colors. Sometimes students will, when I have this conversation, sometimes feel, and this, I think your brightness versus saturation sort of keyed in on this. Sometimes it can feel like a sunrise can feel more yellow, and a sunset can feel more red. The idea being that like brighter and sort of the burst of illumination out of the dark, and sort of the more muted tones of sunset. Sure, yeah. In reality, scientifically, not a huge difference, but we associate some of these things culturally and narratively with these things. So we should think about that as we do, as we light things and as we choose color. Along those same lines, what color is the light at night? Let's pretend you've just got the light of the moon. What color is night? White or blue? Yeah, good. I would agree with that. What color are we used to seeing on stage and on screen? Black is good, but really blue. If the reality is, if you go out tonight into your backyard, I'm not sure what's the deal with the moon. I don't follow my astrology astronomy, so I don't know if we're on what phase of the moon tonight. Yeah, little tiny moon. All right. So if you go out on a little tiny moon tonight, you might not see, and you went out into the countryside, so you were away from all the electric lights of the city. You might not get very much at all. Somebody said black. Yes, darkness. Yes, that's probably what you'd see. But whether it be starlight or moonlight, when it's a little bit brighter out there, you can see a little bit, but it's not really blue. There is sort of a slight bluish hue to it, but it doesn't look the way we think about when we light things on stage and on screen. Yeah, if you watch movies and they show you a thing and they show you a scene that's taking place at night, it'll be a lot of times pretty blue. And that's a thing that we've just sort of been trained to agree is okay. It's like a little shorthand for the audience. Hey, if we did it the way it would be real, it'd be too dark to show you on camera. So we're not going to do that. We're going to put it in blue light. Everybody cool? Great. And you move on. Somebody in, the early days of filmmaking figured out that we could, as soon as there was color in your filmmaking, could said, okay, we're just going to do this, and the audience is going to figure it out. And then since being little children, we've been trained that that's what night looks like. But if you actually go and look at night is black, and then is sort of white with maybe a slightish bluish tinge, but it's not like blue. On stage, we use that same thing. We use blue for night all the time, because at some point, I don't want to hear from the person in the back row. I can't see their faces. And if I light it with white light, even if I light it with white light, I can light it at such a low level that it looks real. But a lot of times if I do that, you're still like, I can't see him from the back row. So what do I have to do? I have to balance where is realism and where is artistic choice, and try to find that happy medium. Yeah? Cool. So we did intensity, color. Next one was the one we didn't think of in our little list before, movement. Well, so I usually, well, I always list them in that order, but clearly I left that for last. Oh well. But let's talk about distribution. And there it is on the board. So distribution. We picked up on this before. This one is, there's a lot to play with here in that, oops, as I click through too many slides. There's a lot to play with here. This category can feel kind of broad. Yeah. So it's where the light is aimed, yes, but also isolation, which was the sort of thing that you brought up before about how much light is there, how much space on stage does it cover, but also where is that light coming from? What direction is it coming from? Let's talk about isolation for a minute. So I worked on a show 20 years ago now, more than 20 years ago. Oof, time is weird. That a lighting mentor and a directing mentor of mine were working on this production, and I was sitting in the audience watching them in rehearsal, watching them tech the show. So they're writing light cues on figuring out sort of the remember we said tech rehearsals are right before dress rehearsals. So it's during a tech rehearsal. And we had a thrust stage, and it was a scene that was supposed to take place at night. And we have it's a Shakespeare show, and we have sort of a lord and a soldier standing in a corner of the stage, upstage right. And the stage was lit in beautiful sort of whitish, bluish moonlight dappled through trees. It was very clean, it was very clear, and it covered the whole stage. Had this really beautiful sort of dappled moonlight look across the whole stage. And the director turned to the lighting designer and said, I'd like there to be less light on stage. And the lighting designer said, I don't know what you want. And the director said, I would like there to be less light on stage. And the lighting designer says, what do you mean? And the director said, on stage, less light. I would like less light on stage. On stage, less light. I would like less light on stage. And the lighting designer said, I don't know what you mean. And the director said, on stage, I would like there to be less light on stage. These two grown men were literally shouting at each other. Now, I'd like to think that the director could have tried to understand what the lighting designer was confused about, but I think this is on the lighting designer here. It's the lighting designer's fault that this argument was happening because he didn't ask any different questions. If you're not getting a different answer, then ask a new question. What was his confusion? What are two ways that we could have had less light on stage in that scenario? Yeah, so we could have changed intensity overall. I would like less light on stage. This dappled moonlight through the trees looks beautiful. I'd like it to just be dimmer. I'd like all of it to be dimmer. Yeah. Or distribution change. Instead of an intensity change, a distribution change. This dappled moonlight through the trees looks great, but I just want it on the two guys that are standing back there. What's all this other light? Get rid of all the rest of this. Change the distribution. Make it more isolated just on these gentlemen here and leave the rest of this nice and dark. I think the actual answer was a combination of both. I think a little bit less light on the two and also less light everywhere else, sort of tapering nicely from where they are in a bright spot to darkness elsewhere. That's what I would have done. But instead, I just got to watch these two guys that I had a lot of respect for shout at each other for a minute. Yeah, it was really very, very Abbott and Costello. And it would have been extremely fun. Now it's very funny. At the time, it was baffling. Like, why isn't this getting any better? They're just getting louder. It's not getting any better. Yeah, I think about that often. It's a wonderful lesson on intensity versus distribution. It's also a nice lesson on communication skills and how to ask a different question if you're not getting the result that you're looking for. So then we can also talk about soft edges versus hard edges. To give an example of that, I carry a flashlight with me everywhere because I'm me and I have the job that I have. So See if we can see that on screen. Yeah, we can. Very good. Over there. This is a very hard-edged circle of light. Yeah. Very, very crisp edges. As opposed to if I were to turn on like a lamp in your house, you don't really have like, here's the lamp from the house and here's here's darkness. The lamp doesn't reach here. It just sort of oozes. Yeah, there's not really hard edges there. It just sort of, even in this room, we've got the light from the windows here. You can sort of see, if you look over all your right shoulder back here, there's a shadow from that cubicle wall. Sorry, folks at home. I don't know if I can turn a camera to you. But at this point, you'd have to actually move the camera. Don't worry about it. But because I'm actually looking at the shadow of the cubicle back there. So that there's sort of a hard edge shadow, and then there's sort of a softer one. It just has to do with how the light is coming through the window. We can sort of see, yes, there's a shadow and light area, but that line between them is not like a right crisp, sharp-edged line. It's sort of softer. Yeah, we can use that to great effect. If I want something to feel, even just thinking about spotlights, sometimes I want a spotlight that really stands out from the world, right? Think about something like vaudeville, something that like Bugs Bunny. When Bugs Bunny draws a spotlight, right? It's like a perfect circle. Yeah, spotlights, boom. But most of the time, I don't want my spotlight to look like that. Most of the time, if I've got a spotlight that's following around an actor, I don't want you to realize that they're in a spotlight. I want you to just see their faces well, and then it's sort of, you don't notice that there's this drop off in light to everywhere else around them. So hard edge versus soft edges. And then light and shadow. Yeah, exactly what we talked about, that contrast. Some of that gets into intensity, of here's this light on brighter than this light's on. But a lot of times what you're seeing there is you're just seeing, we have these things called gobos. It's a fun little word. I promise it's not the name of an evil clown, which is what I think it sounds like. A gobo is a thin piece of metal that has a hole punched through it that has different shapes. And you can get them in all kinds of, you can get them custom made. So it has like the Hope College anchor, or it can be like words or any number of things. But a lot of times it's things like the pattern of light through trees, or specific kinds of trees, or geometric shapes, or windows, or whatever. Stars. You can put those into a light fixture, and then that light fixture will show that shape. So we can use that to great effect as well. Yeah. Last piece of the puzzle is movement. So let's think about this. How might we see movement in lighting? Think about on stage. What are ways that you've seen light cause or create or do movement on stage? I just talked about one a second ago. What was that? A mirror ball. Yeah, mirror ball is great. Here's a fun thing here. What you're looking at in this image here is not a mirror ball. I've tricked you. Huzzah. What I've done here is actually, so the thing that looks like a mirror ball in the center there is actually a chandelier, which in person didn't look like a mirror ball, but had a lot of reflective surfaces on it. And then what I've done there is actually I've got two different lights, one sort of off to your left and one off to your right, that both have a gobo in them that have little tiny holes that look like stars. And then they're aimed across each other. And then I have what's called a gobo rotator in each of them that lets the gobo spin. So it gave the illusion that we had a mirror ball, but I didn't have to put another thing in the air above the stage. I have to find another way to move it. I have to find it, like I bypassed all that by just having these two lights here that did this little cheat. And so everybody was like, oh, there's a mirror ball. And I was, nope. But yeah, a mirror ball is great. So yeah, actual lights actually moving somehow, whether that be via a mirror or via a gobo rotator or something like this. Yeah, other things that we might see lights move or movement of lights. Lightning. So lightning isn't necessarily something moving, but it gives us the illusion of movement, right? Because we can see, like, if we see a flash here and a flash here and a flash here, our eye follows that. Do-do-do. That's a natural thing for our eye to do. And that movement is exciting to us. So we've caused your eye to move by having lights flash. Now, that can be specifically for lightning, or we can just have make your eye track movement by having lights change. So if I've got an actor over here, and I want you to stop looking at this person and start looking at the person over there, I can keep the light on this person and then turn on this one over here. And when I turn this one on, your eye is naturally going to go to the light that just turned on. And then once you're not looking at that anymore, then I'll fade that out. If I do it at the same time, if I've got the light on here and I go, whoop, your eye will move, but you'll also be frustrated because you're going to be like, well, where am I supposed to be looking, Eric? Come on. I thought I was supposed to be here, and then boom, now we're over here. I liked this guy. I was enjoying this person over here. Why are you making me look at this over here? Whereas if I say, we've been enjoying this, we're all happy with this. Hey, I'd like you to meet this person over here. Oh, this person's great. And then we don't notice that this has gone away. Yeah. Just by drawing your eye with a light change, I've moved your eye, I've caused movement with the light, and then I can take this out. So I've used intensity, a change in intensity, to cause movement in your eye and movement in the light as well. Other things, other ways that we might see movement on stage with light. I talked about one a minute ago when I talked about Bugs Bunny.
When you project animation or video on the back.
Yeah, that's good. Absolutely. So if you've got a projector, that can function like light that is moving in some ways. That you can do some cool stuff with projection. And it can be a light source, similar to when I stood in front of the projector a minute ago. That also gets into a little bit. I'm gonna use you as a cheat and bounce off of that idea and draw it into another thing, which is intelligent light fixtures. We have light fixtures that can move on their own now. You see this a lot of times if you go to concerts. Or if you've watched the Super Bowl and seen the halftime show or anything like this, you see lights that kind of do this kind of thing, right? They can all spin around and do whatever. So you can actually get movement of light because the lights themselves are moving. Yeah. And then the last thing is follow spots. An actual person sitting behind a light, physically aiming it and moving it. That is a fun, very hard job to do really well and super important. So yeah, lights physically moving, so whether it be intelligent lights moving on their own, lights drawing our eye by turning on and off and moving from one location to one scene to another, and then follow spots, actual physical lights being moved in the space by a human being as opposed to a pre-programmed thing where it moves on its own. Yeah, absolutely. Great. And sometimes we call those intelligent fixtures, or anything. A moving light is an intelligent fixture, meaning that any light fixture that can do more than just on off, we call it an intelligent fixture, because it can do, even if it can't move around, sometimes you have things that can change color even if they can't move. But these intelligent fixtures can do anything from just change color to have a gobo built into them, to change shape, to get bigger and smaller, all kinds of stuff. So ultimately, lighting design tells us where to look, when to look there, and how to feel about it. This is my job. You can you can simplify anybody's job down into one sentence and it sounds really inane. Uh, my job is I turn lights on and off, and that's all I do. Except the trick is knowing which ones to turn off and which ones to turn on and when and how. But really, it's my job is turning lights on and off. That's it. But what I'm trying to do with turning those lights on and off is this. Lighting design tells the audience where to look, when to look there, and how to feel about it. Yeah? So back to our example of this person over here that we were enjoying, and then we get to see this person, and I want to draw your eye to them. Where to look? Look here. When to look there? Now. But not now, because now I want you to look here. Where to look? Look over here. When to look there? Now. Because now I'm turning this on. And how to feel about it. How am I lighting this person? Is this person lit with bright red light? With soft golden light? With cold blue light directly from above so they feel small and low? What are you looking at? When are you looking at it? And how do you feel about it? And I can tell you to do all kinds of stuff with just that. Just the things that we've done. I can completely change the way you see a scene. Let's talk about that for a minute. An example. So I liked a lot of dance as well as theater. Let's say we've got a scene that has no dialogue. Could be a dance piece, could be a theater piece, could be like a prelude opening to a larger show. I have a group of fairies down here, downstage right. And they are prancing about in the wood. And then a figure is going to come in from upstage left, tall and regal looking, and stand. And then draw their attention. Cool. With that much information, I can tell a couple of very different narratives just by how I light it. Yeah. We've got people, our fairies down here prancing about in the wood. Let's say it's golden dappled sunlight through the trees. It feels warm. It feels inviting. You can see their face as well. There's little hints of pink in with that gold. Lovely. This person walks in. I don't light them when they first walk on stage. I wait till they are already in place. And then once they are in place, light them just from behind with a deep saturated red light that starts to glow and grow upon them. And then that light spreads and takes in the group downstage as well. And then after that red has encroached on that group in the wood, then I bring up light on this person's face, revealing that it's the evil queen who's been here the whole time, or whatever the case might be. Yeah? That's a narrative. I've told you a story, just with light. Let's flip it around. Same group. We got the same group of people downstage right. They're prancing about, but maybe their movements are a little more furtive because actually they're darting between light and shadow. There's a hint of green to everything, and not like a nice golden, that warm green you get in the woods, but like a sickly green that doesn't feel real, that feels a little bit like something toxic, and it's coming from below, so it's unfamiliar angle. We as human beings are used to seeing lights from above. That's where the sun is. When lights are from below, we think it's creepy. This is why we do this when we tell scary stories around the campfire, right? Because unfamiliar angles, like below, and unfamiliar colors, like green, there's no naturally occurring green light in the world, really, because even light through trees doesn't actually turn green terribly often, unless you got really, really, really thin leaves. So green light from below, ooh, it's otherworldly, it's dangerous, it's scary. And then this person walks on upstage and is suddenly a gold white light beams down on them from above. They are lit from the front. They stand looking strong and powerful, and the group down here cowers in fear or celebrates in great joy because this is their ally, and heroic savior has arrived, whatever. The exact same blocking, the exact same movement of these dancers or these actors on stage, and I can tell you two completely different narratives using intensity, color, movement, distribution. I can tell you where to look, when to look there, and how to feel about it. So, functions of stage light. We can talk about these a little bit. We'll sort of go through these. Visibility is ultimately, you can have a stage can be lit without it being well designed. Does that make sense? What I mean by that is visibility is easy, right? If I turn on the lights in this room, visibility is, we're good. We did it. Huzzah. We can have work light on stage, just like basic light to be able to build the set by. That's visibility. But it's not really well designed unless I'm doing all these other things. Selective focus, that's like trying to direct your eye to one thing or another. Modeling is how does the human figure or the set look? And some of that has to do with where that light comes from. And then mood is the thing we sort of picked up on from before. This next bit, we're actually going to come back to this topic. I'll let it pop up here though, so that y'all can see it. How can I show a design team what the show will look like? So we'll jump back to this in just a second. So here we are on the HASP page. Close that. Close that email. All right, y'all get to see my desktop, which is not as messy as some, but is a little less tidy than I would like. So from here, I'm going to real quick bring back. Last time we were talking about design process and sort of that from the page to the stage process, and we spent a little bit of time with our scenic designer had done these storyboards for Brightstar. Yeah. Had sort of gone through and looked at these things, and he had done this with a model, and he'd used a white model to do that, right? Where he'd done his model, he'd built his model out of white material, hadn't painted it, let it deliberately be a little slapdash for his liking, because it was a way for him to explore, and try things. He then did a final version. I can't remember if I actually showed you all this. So he's got a final model that is more detailed, more precise, is fully painted. And he's going through each moment in the show, each scene in this show that we're working on coming up this spring, and showing the director, here's how I intend for you to use this space in this scene. That doesn't mean the director can't kick back and say, hey, I don't want this many chairs. Or I really think I need a desk here as well. But it gives us a vocabulary to go through the whole show and sort of show us how he intends us to use this space. Yeah? This is great. This is a thing that's really easy to do for scenery because you can build a model. Yeah? You can build, you can even just like do renderings via Photoshop or hand drawing or painting. You can show your intent on stage a lot of different ways. Similarly with costumes, I can show you actual garments. I can show you patterns. I can show you all kinds of things. From there, this is not a scenic class, so I'm not going to go into how to actually read this drafting. But your designer, your scenic designer, then creates a document that is a drafting document. Essentially, it's a blueprint. Yeah. So this is how he intends this show to be laid out. This is not just one page, as you might imagine. So this is what we call a section view, with the audience cut in, or with the space cut in half down the center line, and we can see the height of things. Here's our audience over here, and here's our stage. is what we call a front elevation. So it's not drawn with any three-dimensionality depth. It's just flat on what you would see. And now he's got detailed bits for everything that needs to be constructed. How is it built? What does it look like? Where are there, how many mullions are there in the windows? Mullions, good vocabulary word that you can use at parties and impress people. Mullions are the bits that make the cross in the middle of a window. Use it in your next Christmas party. Oh, I like the mullions in your living room. Your host will be very impressed and will, I'm sure, reward you with extra servings of eggnog or something. But yeah, so there's all these details: top view, side view, front view. So he makes all these drawings. He's got measurements of what he intends these things to be, and he gives those things to our technical director. And our technical director then figures out how to actually construct them. So for example, the scenic designer has drawn, not that y'all can necessarily read this from where you are, but this measurement here, it says that the width of this bit of rafter is 32 feet 3.5 inches wide. What's that going to be built out of, and where are there going to be seams, and how's that going to be put together? The technical director figures that out. So he takes this and puts it into a document called, into a different type of drawing. And using that, which I thought I copied and pasted in here, we can get to it a different way. Since we're using my actual computer. Shows Brightstar, shared drive, scenic, technical director drafting, technical director model. So our technical director, TD, if you saw that in the file name there, our technical director takes all those documents that the scenic designer did and redrafts them himself with every single board, exactly how he wants it to be built, so that he can take that drawing and he can break it up into little parts. And when his employees, students in our case, come into his shop, he can hand them a document and say, this is what you're doing today. I need you to cut this many of these boards, and then I need you to assemble them like this. This is loading. This software that we're going to look at here is called Vectorworks. Specifically, the Vectorworks Spotlight is the area that I use. So he's taken all of those drawings from Scenic Designer and has put them into this software. Another software that we use is called AutoCAD, and actually, so he actually drafts in AutoCAD. I typically use Vectorworks. It's largely to do with how we were trained. But I can zoom in here and we can see every little board of how this is built. Now, from this angle, that might not look like much, but let me zoom out. And let's look at it this way. So he drafts in 3 dimensions. So he's got here exactly how he intends all of these things to be built. So for example, looking at these mullions, using our vocabulary word from moments ago, we can see that he intends for this to be a solid board, with a board that just comes and meets it here on either side. Here's a piece of 2x4 there and a piece of 2x4 there. Actually, I'm going to guess these might be 1x4. I'm not actually taking measurements at the moment, but based on all of this, he has an exact drawing of how he intends, as the computer freaks out for a minute, how he intends this to come together. Yeah. This is very helpful for communicating with the rest of your design team as well. Yeah. You can show that to a director. Now, a director is going to love that model, the actual physical model that we had photos of a minute ago. That's great. But this is helpful as well. These are great. So that's a great way to communicate your ideas. Here's the trick. For a lighting designer, it's a little bit harder for me to communicate my ideas potentially. Yeah. I can't always I can't always rely on there being a model. And if there is a model, how do I light that in a way that's going to in any way capture what I've done on stage or what I intend to do on stage? So let's look at a few options. The first thing I can do is I can do reference images. In the same way that the scenic design team started with research images, in the same way the costume design team started with research images, I can do the same thing. In a minute, I'll show you some that I've done for a couple of recent shows. So these are research images I used for a show years ago. The show is called Dontrelle Who Kissed the Sea. There was a scene that took place in an aquarium. And another scene that took place, sort of a magical realism scene. The end of this show, this African-American young man who's getting ready to go off to college, he rows a boat out into the middle of the ocean. Even that's a little far-fetched. And then jumps out of the boat and sinks down to the bottom and meets his ancestors. And they party, and that's the end. And it's a happy ending. And it's magical realism. So it's not about being real, but it is about trying to evoke that place. So what does it look like underwater? So these are some of the research images I did. Also, just for fun, this lady here in this image, that's my wife. If my reference images can be something that I've actually photographed, great. If they can be something I've taken from the internet, that's good too. So here are those two moments from this show. The idea here on this one on the left was that where this guy was walking around, very similar to this image in the previous, very similar to this here, where the people are walking, it's one color, and where the aquarium is, it's another color. That's the idea here. And then the idea was that this sort of looked like it was underwater. So you get a little bit of color on the ground and a little bit of brightness and whatnot. Next thing we can do is sketches. Yeah. Sure. So let's talk about that floor for a little bit. So this is the same floor in both of these images. So that floor is actually painted like a gray brown, kind of a sandy bottom of an ocean kind of look. So under like a sort of warm golden light, we got the light that you see on the left here. That's a little bit more warm. But then lit with that blue, you got this, it took the color really well because it was this neutral tone. These sort of darker lines here, you can sort of see were painted onto there. But then in this image on the right, we're seeing a couple things. Sort of the golden image back here, that's very clearly a gobo, sort of like that leafy tree sort of gobo I talked about. But then here we've got these little sort of looks like sunlight lines through ocean waves. And let's actually show you how I did this. Open this up and we're going to type in water, sunlight, gobo, Roscoe, and we'll see if this pops up immediately. That's good. Those are okay. Let's get rid of the word sunlight. There we are. This one. This is the exact gobo I used. So light projected through something like that gave me this effect that we see down here. That makes sense? And that answer the question? Yeah, absolutely. I'm happy to go into detail stuff, especially stuff that makes me seem cool and smart. So we can use sketches. Sketches are great. Sketches are a really good way to convey your ideas. Now I'm going to bring my my handy dandy whiteboard back over. Here's a trick with sketches. If this is a piece of paper, and I'm going to try and draw a sketch on it of what I want to have happen with the light, okay? This is strange. I'll show you why. let's say I'm saying, okay, I've got a person here and I want them, and I'm going to have a light come from this side that's going to light up this side of their face and body. What's weird about that? Think about the color of this pen and where the light is coming from. Did you just get it? Yes, this looks like I've just drawn shadows. I'm intending to draw light, right? The light is coming from this side, but I've just drawn shadows. How could I solve this? What was that? I could put the shadow on the other side. This is a good idea. It also gets a little hard to draw. It's a little counterintuitive. It's not impossible, but it's a strange thing when it comes to, let's say, oh good, this marker does work and it's blue. So let's do this. I've got a person. Here's my person. That person has much longer arms this time. Oh boy, their proportions are all off. It's gone off the rails. Okay, so this weird mutant robot is on stage, and now I've got a blue light from this side. Okay, here's my blue light. Now I've got blue here because that's what I'm hitting them with, and then I need to color in the shadow on the other side. Okay, and I guess maybe there's a shadow on the ground as well. Okay, this works, but it gets a little disjointed. Here's another way I can solve it. Use black paper. I can use black paper and use colored pencils. We'll see it on screen in a moment. And suddenly now, it's all a lot more simple. I am actually drawing with light as opposed to drawing with shadow. The shadow is everywhere until I put color onto it. This is a great way to do this. If you don't have a computer, if you don't have a lab or anything like this, if I want to get an idea across, colored pencil on black paper works great. It's a simple way to do this. You can sort of see these two images. We've got light from in the image on the left. We've got sort of blue light outside the windows of this house. We've got golden light sort of streaming in from a room underneath the balcony there. We've got light from the fireplace. Very nice. And then in the next image on the right-hand side, it's darker everywhere else. But when we've opened the doors to outside, moonlight streams in, and there is sort of a dull glow from the fireplace now. Yeah, I can get my idea across with this. This is great. This is wonderful. We can also do sketches in a more digital way. This is fun that I hit advance here and then it sort of like slowly catches up when I hit the, so this was from a dance piece called Just Enough that I lit several years ago. The choreographer wanted the show to be lit the first like 5 to 10 minutes of this piece. She wanted the lights to not change very much, but she wanted to start with no curtains or anything, as if like we had started the show and they weren't ready, and that you could actually see some of the lights like in place, and that then we would bring in curtains as the dancers were starting to move, and eventually all of the curtains would be brought in, and then the dancers would have a moment where they would each get a garbage bag. And they would take the garbage bag, and you know when you shake out a garbage bag and it makes the loudest noise that's ever happened in the entire world? When you say if 7 people take a garbage bag and go, it makes a huge noise. And then that would be the first time that the lights would change. And then she would also have some music start at that point. It would be the first time that music had been in the piece. So to give an idea of, she explained all this, and I said, okay, I want to make sure I understand it. I want to make sure we're on the same page. And here's a sense of what that will look like. So I wanted to give her this rendering. So I did this just in Photoshop and also I think Microsoft Paint of all things. I didn't need it to look perfect, but I needed it to look like something. So there's this sort of background of the theater. There's some lights that are in place. There's our dancers. Our dancers are going to move across the space, and we're going to have the lights fly away. We're going to slowly bring our different curtains in to the space here. Eventually, we'll bring in all the curtains, and we'll have what looks like a normal stage. And then we'll have a major lighting change. Boom, that's the whole show. We're good. So then here's the reality. Here is what we actually put into execution. I showed her that concept. She said, yep, that's exactly what I'm looking for. Good. And then here, this was me attempting to put it into reality. So this is the final dance piece. We have the group of dancers. We have the lights above here that you can see in place. We're starting to see the dancers are in the space. There's more and more curtains. The curtains are all the way around. And then they take their garbage bags and boom. And now we get this very dramatic look, exactly as we showed in the rendering. So if I can imagine it and I can draw it, whether that be with a colored pencil on a black piece of paper or with some simple drawings in a computer, then I can convey my idea to the choreographer or to the director or to the rest of the team and say, are we on the right track? Better to do that than get to tech rehearsals and have them go, that's not what we talked about at all. You've completely misunderstood. And now I've got a real problem. I'm wasting a bunch of people's time. So I'm going to skip through this one because this one's good, but I've got other examples that are worth talking about. It's another dance piece. It was good, but here's another option. Lighting a model. So if I have a model, I can put that in a light lab. And what you're watching here is you're assuming that it loads in a moment here. Oh man, it already blitzed through it. So I took several pictures of this model. And actually just in PowerPoint, I'm slowly shifting between those pictures that I've taken with different lighting effects. And ultimately what you're seeing is what looks like sunrise. Sort of snapped through a couple of them there just because we're having a little bit of technical difficulties here. Folks online, I apologize for that, but it's good enough. But yeah, by putting this into what we call a light lab, which is basically a small table-sized space with smaller lights than what we would have in an actual theater, and we can sort of aim it and focus them just where we need them, and we can make something that looks really pretty good. Depending on the size of the lab and how well it's set up, we can get a lot out of it. I'd like to improve the one at Hope. I've got plans to do that, but for now, this is what we've got one that does our job really well. This is actually from the University of Illinois, where I was in grad school. The other thing I can do is I can do that digitally. This is a little bit me trying to like represent something that is in my head. Yeah. So I can here's a model. This is a model that I've tried to light as flat as possible, as simple as possible. Try to have as few shadows. Wait for it to pop up. Come on, thing. There it goes. Bye-bye. Here's a model. I've lit this as flat as possible. So it has just as few shadows as possible. I just want it to be like, just look at the thing. I take that into Photoshop, and I can make it look like that as soon as it loads. I can make it look like that. So it's we got a little bit too much brightness from the windows here, but you can still see this pretty well. I make it look like each of those little light bulbs is bright. Is giving off a little bit of glow. You can see the light on the stairs that's coming from off stage left. You can see that same glow that's hitting the stairs is also hitting the wall here. And I can just do all this digitally. Another version is about to pop up. There we are. So the idea being I want to have some texture. I want to have some gobos on this thing. Here's what this is going to look like playing with pink and gold and how these are going to play together. A few different options. And also the cyc behind, being able to see that glow of the sky behind the structure. And I can even put some figures in there. Personally, I like when if I put an actor in a piece, I like to put them as neutral as possible because I don't want to make any comments on what I think the costumes should be. I don't want to intrude, you know? Somebody else is doing their job over there. I don't need to horn in on their territory. So I can use just sort of these sort of simple outlines of figures and can then color them appropriately. And sort of establish where I want light to come from. The other thing I can do, let's say I've got a scenic designer who doesn't do things digitally. There's a more old school design aesthetic that does everything by hand. That's fine. I'm not as good at by hand as these folks are sometimes. So this was Driving Miss Daisy at Hope Summer Repertory Theater a few years ago. Joe Flauto was the scenic designer. He's a phenomenal scenic designer, but he's sort of an old school kind of guy, and he does everything by hand. And he does these beautiful renderings like this one. This is a great hand rendering that he did. And he's drawn in some lighting there, sort of just a little bit of those beams. He's trying to get the impression of what he wants this to look like. He's given me something to play with, what he intends that world to look and feel like. But he's not given anything with color. This is just a basic image here. So I took that and took it into Photoshop. First thing I did was essentially digitally, quote unquote, turned off the lights, dimmed it a little bit. And then, very similar to that colored pencil look from before, just started carving out light. Here it comes. Once it does its thing. Come on, thing. There we go. So yeah, I can show a director, this is my intent. This is what I expect this to look like. And then there's the final product. There is one change that we did from the concepts to reality. If you can see, it might be hard to see on here, but you can see that there's 3 gobos on the ground here that look like windows that are actually as if light is coming through a window and sitting on this woman on the chair. Instead, in reality, I ended up putting those up on the wall because it gave us a sense of where we were. Instead of putting the light from the windows on the ground, I put the light on the wall as if maybe those are the windows themselves that we're seeing. A little more abstract, but it fit the scene well. We did. So this is where things can change a little bit from concept to reality to execution. Similar idea in a colder winter scene, and then a reality version of that in just a moment. Wait for it. It's thinking. Ta-da. And then sort of light through trees to sort of like, this is what this might look like across the full stage. Come on, thing, load. There's that, which I could then translate to this look here. A couple of different versions of that. Let's skip past a couple of these things. Get to this image. This image is cool. There's a moment that they needed to be approaching somebody's house and needed to be decorated for the holidays. And I said, well, what if we just go pretty abstract? We don't make anything look like an actual house. We just sort of give them something that looks like wintry. And then in reality, I said, well, it actually is more fun if it's colorful. So rather than just like cold snowflakes that are realistic, let's make it a little more fun. We've got 10 minutes left. I'm going to show you where we are on Brightstar. So as we talked about, the iDrive, teaching, ASP, welcome to the folder of all the things that I thought I might try to cover in here. There's so many things. And let's look at Bright Star preliminary lighting research. So I actually gave this almost the same presentation to the cast of Bright Star last week. So what we often do is we do what's called a design to cast presentation, where each of the designers talks to the cast about where we are in our process and what we intend the show to look like. This is helpful so the actors know, what the heck are we doing? What's it going to look like? Because right now we're just a group of people standing around in a room, like looking at chairs and things. Like, it doesn't look like anything. It's just we're learning music and learning our lines, but that's it. So where are we going to be? So the scene designer showed some of the things that we have already looked at in this class, but then I got up and talked about this. So showed a few different pieces of lighting research, things that used lights sort of hanging from different rafters and things. Come on, slide, do your thing. There you are. A few different things here. I'm just going to breeze through a couple of these. We got to this one here. I'm not so much interested in the Rastafarian kind of look for this show, but the use of color. I liked the color usage in this, that even though it's set in the same barn, we can still have that barn feel while having some color to it, and that doesn't break the mood. Yeah, this was like my little proof of concept. This will be okay. The light sort of streaming in from behind, seeing that light through the cracks in the wall there. That's an effect that we want to have happen at one point, particularly in the show. And here's an example of how I've used a similar thing in a past production of a different play. This is actually from the DeWitt Theater. This is from Hope Summer Repertory Theater a couple years ago, The Old Man and the Old Moon. Beautiful piece. We had a lot of fun with this. And the idea that I shared this with the group is that it's about the texture, about all the different gobo color there, and about all the different sort of light and shadow and interplay. That's a little bit abstract, and that's okay. Our set is sort of bridging the gap between realistic and not realistic. Our costumes are pretty grounded in realism, but that means that the lighting can have moments of realism, but can mostly play in non-realistic emotion. And that's the world that this show lived in. So that's what I wanted to show there. This is actually design work from a friend of mine, but that I'm going to show next. And the main thing I wanted to show with this next image was just a little bit of haze. If I show you this flashlight that I've just got, I got in my pocket, and I just aim it down like this, you can't necessarily tell whether this light is on or not. It is, but you can't see it until the light hits something. We don't see light until it hits things. So if I want to see beams of light in the air, we need to have what we call atmospherics, which could be haze or smoke or fog. Those all have kind of different ways of interacting. Haze is what we think of when you think about rock and roll concerts and also Broadway shows. Haze is just that little bit of wisp of light of particulate in the air that we don't like see it swirling like fog or smoke. You almost don't notice haze until you put a beam of light through it, and then you're able to see this like cone of light. So what I like about this image here is that there's just a little bit of haze. You can see this little bit of smoke up here, this little bit of light through that, but it's not like boom. Like, it's not like you're like having to like wave it out of your face. These are research images from the Green Mill pub in Uptown in Chicago. I actually visited there this weekend as well for research and also to see friends. This is a 1940s, this was Al Capone's bar. And so there's a scene in this show that takes place in the 1940s in a bar. And so this is a bar from the 1940s. And this is a little bit of my research for this project. And then for this show, I actually did, because the scenic designer did have that model, one afternoon, I took that model. I only had a couple of hours, and I took that model into the light lab that we have at Hope and did a few effects with it. So we've got this one scene where it takes place on a train. And so we've got a series of chairs on either side. And what we'll do at the beginning of this song, there is the string instruments make this really wonderful crunchy chord that sounds like a train whistle. It goes, and then there's like a big thud, and that'll be like when they set these chairs down, and then it kind of does it again. It goes, ka-choom. And then it starts to speed up, and then there's a moment where we're going to have somebody take like a train lantern and pick it up at the front of the train, and it'll look like this, and the music starts to kick in, and it goes, see, it doesn't pop in right when I hit it, so now it doesn't, my dramatic effect is lost. There it is. Okay. So there's the music kicks in, and we go, and it looks like a train. And then what's going to happen is that we're going to have light from the sides come in, and as that light from the sides moves from downstage to upstage, it will look like we are passing other things and like the train is moving. And then near the end of the piece, this guy goes to the back of the train, and we get to see sort of the sky beyond. And these are just some other images that I made with this in the Light Lab of this model, sort of lit in a few different ways, showing off sort of some of the things that we can do with it. So we're gonna have some fun. One last thing to show you, and which is that we'll go back to, come on. All right, there we are. I was gonna say I could talk about this stuff all day, which is true, but it's also just sort of like, yeah, of course you can. It's your job, Eric. So what we've been one of the things that we've been trying to solve currently for Brightstar is, so this is a very rough light plot. So what I've done is I've taken the set from the previous thing that I was showing you, that digital 3D rendered scenic design, and I've put it into a document where I have a rough light plot. I'm going to zoom in on part of this. So you can kind of see here's a light, and here's a light, and here's a light, and here's a light. And what we can do with that eventually, so the plot that's in here is sort of our light plot that could function in this space with no set. So it's very, very rough. Not perfect for this show. But what I can do is I can do things like I can say, I've told the system that I want this particular light that I've just highlighted here to be aimed at a particular place in space. And then I can ask it to draw a simple outline of a beam of where I want that light to go. Yeah? So I can use that tool to then fly around in space and see where that light's going to go. Which leads us to our current problem. Anybody see an issue? We're going to try and light that through these rafters. That's a problem because my actors are going to have big shadows on their faces, and I don't want that. So just earlier today, I was talking with the scene designer and the technical director, and we're going to continue that conversation tomorrow morning. We have an appointment for, I think, 11 a.m. We're going to go through that and try to solve this problem. So when you come see Brightstar this spring, it might be that there are fewer rafters over the audience. We like the idea of the rafters on stage extending out over the audience. But if we can't make it work, they might need to go away. Or do they need to move up? Or do they need to move out? Or do they need to change how many there are? Or if there's only one, is it worth doing it at all? It's unfortunate to have to like change somebody else's design, but if we can't see the actors, that's not good enough. Because why else did we come to the theater? It's a beautiful set though. So we got to figure out this problem. So that's our current conundrum. And we'll be working on that. And when you come see Brightstar this spring, we'll look forward to showing you what we've been working on. Speaking of, I'll mention, I don't think I've shared this with y'all. I think I mentioned on our first day that I came into Hope as an actor, as so many of us do, and then discovered lighting and directing and all these other things that I love and I'm passionate about. so I have not acted in any sort of real way in a very long time. But we were worried about how many gentlemen we had available to do this show, worried that we wouldn't have enough guys. And so we, the faculty was asking, or the lighting, excuse me, the director asked various faculty and other people that have worked with the department before whether they'd be willing to be involved in this show. And she asked me, Eric, you sing, you act, or you did. Would you be willing to be on stage? And I said, I need to design lights. I said, if you, and I also am supposed to work on a dance concert in there. If we can get somebody else to cover the dance concert, and if I can get credit for it for my teaching load, and if you're okay with when we get to tech rehearsals, I'm not on stage for 4 days and you have somebody else stand in my place, then yeah, I'll be on stage. And she was fine with that. So if you come see Bright Star, I'll be acting as well as doing the lighting design for that. So you'll get to see what we've talked about in action, and you'll also get to see more of me prancing about and doing stuff. I get to play a pretty mean father character. He means well, but he's needs to do better. He gets a nice apology scene in the second act. All right, so that's it for time. Just like last week, I'm totally willing to like sit and chat for a little bit. I just want to be conscious of everybody's time. I'm sorry that I went 4 minutes over here. But like I say, if you've got any questions, I'm happy to take them. I'm gonna put the chat open here just in case anybody wants to drop something in there. But yeah,
I didn't see anything in chat, but certainly as we wrap this series, we appreciate everything that you've presented so much. Does anybody at home have anything they'd like to unmute and say before we wrap up?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
if you're
happy
in
to.
class, I'll hand you off a mic.
Yeah, and if folks have to take off either online or in person, that's totally fine. I won't be offended. We're at time, so beyond time, which I am conscious of.
Life will never be the same again. In the future.
Yeah, life will never be the same again. I actually have I have students that tell me this as well, when I show you how to look, if you spend a full semester with me talking about how I look at light and how I look at the world all the time, I'll kind of break your brain a little bit, because then you won't be able to look at stuff without thinking about the same thing, this is just how my brain works all the time now. So yeah, I appreciate that, Andre.
So do students, I'm sorry. So
No, go ahead. What was that?
Do students, when they're taking classes from you, are they taking classes at the same time with, let's say, the costume person and sound and stuff like that?
Yeah. So we have a principles of design class that's like an introductory course for the theater department of like understanding color, shape, line, mass, form, value, some of these things, and how those all sort of artistic concepts. The idea is that you theoretically take that class usually first before you take other design courses. And then we have a stage production 1, stage production 2, and stage production 3 course. Those courses introduce sort of the base, a little bit of design, but really the basics of being a technician in 6 essential areas: stage management, lights, sound, costumes, scenery, and drafting. And those each get a half semester. And then we have design courses. We have a lighting design class, a costume design class, a scenic design class, and then sound we usually do as like an independent study. So we offer the lighting design class every other year. And if you're a theater major, you're required to take one of those design courses. But if you're primarily a like design major as opposed to performance, we only have one. We have a lot of flexibility within the major. So we might encourage you, hey, if you're actually really interested in design, you should take more than one of these. You should diversify your skill set a little bit. So
Thank you.
you're welcome. Yeah, question back here.
Hold on one moment. Let me deliver you the mic.
Oh, a microphone is coming. Or a microphone is being delivered.
I just wanted to bring up that a couple of years ago, 2 years in succession or so, they did it was a group that came in and did our founding fathers discussions, and
Inventing America.
And
Okay,
it-
yeah.
It makes me appreciate that so much more, the things that had to go through. They adapted well to our facility, I must say.
Yeah. So anytime you have a group that's on tour, yeah, so I didn't get to see that, so I don't know exactly sort of what went into it. But anytime you have a group that's on tour, there's a lot of planning that goes into that, into how we are going to tour, right? What are we going to bring with us versus what are we going to assume that each venue has. The trick is you don't assume. You make what's called a rider. And your rider is something you send in advance. And so the person at Hope gets that advance rider and goes through it all and then prepares the space appropriately. Oh, they need one of these, they need one of that, they need these in this place, they need these already set up, they need these in place. Okay, we're going to get it all set up so that when they arrive with whatever it is that they're bringing, it all fits together nicely. Here's a fun little anecdote about that. This is less about lighting and more about like rock and roll. Have you ever heard the like stories about a rock and roll star who's so particular about their things they want backstage that like they want a bowl with only brown M&Ms or something? Have you heard something like this? And it sounds like they're a pompous jerk, right? It actually is not that. It's a safety thing. What they do is they put something ridiculous in their rider. Hey, I want a bowl with only brown M&Ms. Because if they walk into the room and they see a bowl with only brown M&Ms, that means that this building looked at the full rider and did everything, including the stuff that's ridiculous, which means the stuff that's actually about safety, like this thing needs to be in this place and needs to be able to hold 5,000 pounds of weight, is going to be done as well. If they come in and there's a bowl of M&Ms, but they're not all brown, then they know that somebody didn't read the rider very carefully. So now they need to go through and look at every single thing on stage so that they know that it's not going to be dangerous. So it seems like a prima donna thing, but it's this other thing. So anybody on tour has things that they do to prepare. Doesn't have to be that silly trick, but it is that's where that comes from. But yeah, and then the team on site can contact them in turn and say, hey, you have requested this particular type of light from this location in the balcony. We actually don't have that, but we have this and we can put it here. Is that good enough for you? And the tour will either say yeah or no. Or they might call and say, hey, we can't get you a bowl of M&Ms. And they'll go, oh, that's actually fine, as long as you read it, because you're asking me about it, which shows me that you paid attention. So again, the writer sometimes has some flexibility and sometimes does not, but you got to ask the question. So yeah.
Great. Well, thank you so
welcome.
much for an
Yeah.
amazing journey and yes, seeing things through a different light.
Yeah, very good.
We appreciate you so much at HASP and we hope that if invited, which I'm sure you will be, that you'll come back again.
Absolutely.
So if everybody will just give our appreciation. Thank you so much. Woo!
Thanks. Yeah,
And
very
for the
good.
folks at home, thanks for joining. I'm going to go ahead and close the class. Have a great day.
Very good. Thanks, y'all.